Joe Ducey here with ABC 15. Joe Ducey here with ABC 15 and Let Joe Know. And we are here talking about a very serious issue. As you know, the eviction enforcement moratorium has been lifted. So there are people who have been able to pay rent, who've been protected from actually being evicted from their places, who are no longer protected. If you're one of those people or you know someone who is going through this, for the next 20, 25 minutes, we're going to be talking about that right now. Monica Williams is here with our producer with Let Joe Know on ABC 15. And Pam Bridge, who knows a lot more about this than we do, is here also from Community Legal Services. They deal with a lot of this. I guess, Pam, I want to talk to you first. Well, I want to invite all of you to leave comments, to post a comment, and Pam can take it up or we can look at it. And if we can't get back to you now, hopefully we get back to you at some point. We're also going to give you resources here, websites and information that you could go to, click on, forms that you might want to use, and just give you some information about what's going on because, some people are talking disaster, others maybe not as serious as that now that people are actually being evicted from their places. But Pam is with Community Legal Services. And I guess first, Pam, I wanted to talk to you about what you could provide for people, what Community Legal Services can do for people, and who may qualify for that help.
Sure. Community Legal Services is a nonprofit law firm. We can assist tenants who are low income in 5 different counties: Maricopa, Mojave, La Paz, Yuma, and Yavapai. And so that we are free attorneys that are able to assist tenants. Tenants do have to call us and qualify, and just making sure that they're low income. We have a couple other special programs too. We have a City of Phoenix program and a County of Maricopa program. And the County of Maricopa program is pretty great because we can assist any tenant, regardless of their income, who is facing an eviction for non-payment of rent. And the assistance that we can provide may be brief advice about your eviction coming up. We may be able to do negotiations, and in some situations, we can actually represent the tenant at court. And so tenants should take the time. They can reach out to us and call us, and we can get back to them and give them advice about what situation they're in, what rates they have.
All right, that's great. And I think we're going to put up the site that we can get for you that they can click on. And we've also got, I think, Monica, we put up something that has a lot of this information, right, in an abc15.com article.
Yeah, and I think it's pinned in the comments down below that you can click that link that will take you to a whole list of resources, to links to rental assistance, knowing your rights if you're going through an eviction, and especially Community Legal Services to be able to connect with them.
Okay. All right, so we've got that. Let's pass that along, if you would, to people who are going through this right now, if you know somebody, because I think they're great resources. All right, Pam, let's go into what's happening right now. What are you seeing out there?
We are seeing an increase of evictions. Landlords have gone for months, sometimes without rent. And now that the CDC order is over, they are able to proceed with evictions. And so we are seeing an increase of evictions all over Arizona, not just Maricopa County. We're seeing a lot of some landlords who are choosing to sell. Maybe this has been very financially hard for them, and they've decided to sell and not be landlords anymore or refurbish. And I just like to point out, it is a wave, and for every single one of those families facing an eviction, this is serious. So when we talk about how serious is it for anyone who's facing an eviction and has to move their family, it's very serious and difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know we've talked to a number of those people who are going through the process who thought that, they were getting help. They were being protected. Now that protection is basically gone. So are you seeing landlords taking this to court and trying to make this happen quickly? Were there things in place before because landlords were allowed to file for evictions before, correct? It's just that they couldn't enforce the removal of the people.
Right. Until June, we had about 30,000 evictions filed in Arizona. And so landlords were able to file. It's just that because of the CDC order, tenants who gave the CDC declaration, who qualified for the CDC order, couldn't be locked out of their homes. So what happened to a lot of those tenants is the judge continued their hearing. So they didn't get a judgment yet. The landlord previously filed, and those hearings are being scheduled this month. So there are a lot of continued hearings happening right now. There's also a group of tenants that the landlord already received a judgment who are just staying in place basically until the end of the CDC order. And for those tenants, the landlord is now able to either amend their judgment or apply for a writ so that the tenant can be locked out 5 days from the writ.
Okay, I'm thinking I want to go to Monica's. I know there's some comments. I'm reading through a few of these right now. And there's some sympathy, and there should be also for the landlords. I mean, their landlords have gone without collecting from some of these renters for a period of time. Although I know that there has been some help issued by the government. So maybe Monica, do you want to go through just a couple of those posts?
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are asking, what can landlords do in these situations? And I know that a lot of that has come down to the landlords and working with tenants to get the rental assistance, because the rental assistance isn't just for the tenants. That's going to eventually obviously make it to the landlords. And I know Pam has done a little bit with that to connect renters to that. We do have links to rental assistance in that web article again, because there's statewide assistance, and then there's also assistance for, if you live in the city of Phoenix or Mesa and whatnot. And that eventually does make it to the landlords, and that can slow down the process of if an eviction is on the horizon. And I think Pam probably could speak to that a little bit more of how that impacts the case.
Right. So that money, the rental assistance doesn't go to the tenant, it goes to the landlord. So the tenant never holds that check in their hand. That's money that goes to the landlord. And actually, it can be for all of the rental assistance and the court costs and attorney's fees that the landlord had to pay also. All of the agencies still have money. So if landlords and tenants are still applying for that money, it is out there, so that they should be trying to do this. So if a tenant can get this rental assistance and they don't have a judgment yet, so they have a continued hearing and they get the rental assistance and the landlord is made whole, then basically the whole eviction goes away. The tenant gets to stay, the landlord has all of their money, and they continue their tenancy like nothing happened because the landlord's made whole. Of course, the tenant it's now September, tenant is going to have to make sure they've paid September rent also. So if there is a judgment already, and we have a lot of tenants with a judgment already, if the landlord receives everything in that judgment, then the law says the landlord has to go back into the courts and file a satisfaction of judgment. What we hope is that landlords and tenants, if the landlord is made whole, that they vacate that judgment. So that judgment won't be on the tenant's record, because the landlord has everything owed to them. The tenant could get that judgment vacated. So even if their tenancy is over, they're moving to the next house and don't have that on their record. Right. We think that's an incentive for tenants who already have judgments to want to help the landlord who already got their judgment against them. And so in that situation, both parties are rewarded if they get rental assistance.
I'm going to go through just a couple of comments right here because it's getting, I expected a little bit of this. Some of the people on both sides of this, and I think that, I can see a little bit of both sides. And then I want to really get into what the renters could do who are facing this. Corey Fitzpatrick asked, where's the free attorney representing landlords who are getting basically taken by deadbeat tenants? Another Corey, the landlord is not, let's see. Sarah, landlords are paying their mortgage. Who said landlords have to support irresponsible tenants? I'm talking about, irresponsible. I know people who can't afford this, who lost their jobs because of COVID, who are having a hard time getting a job back, who are facing all kinds of things, and this piles up. Let's see here. Trisha Gonzalez, we're not in a lockdown anymore. If you're responsible to keep a roof over your family's head, this is not the responsibility of the people that own the home. If you can't afford it, find something you can afford. So, there is some sympathy definitely for landlords, but at the same time, and they're not making the money, and I guess they could, lose out on this too and lose their place. But we also know of desperate situations that involve renters who, are trying to pay their rent, who want to pay part of it or are paid to a certain amount and can't do that anymore. So I guess let's go into, well, first of all, let me ask you about that, because that seems to be a lot of the questions. When you talk to some of these people, these renters, what kinds of situations are they facing here? I mean, are they just willy-nilly relying on, hey, I'm not going to pay it, and, somebody's going to have to help me?
Right. The kind of tenant that usually reaches out to an attorney to help is someone who's trying to take action and they're applying for a rental agency. So I actually don't see tenants who think I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. But I'll tell you about a couple of situations we've seen the last 2 days. Tenants who have gone back to work but aren't making as much money as they did before COVID, right? So, but they are in a lease that the landlord maybe is raising rent. We've seen situations where the landlord knows the tenant's not making as much money and is not willing to work with rental assistance because they really want the tenant out. So they want a tenant that can afford the rent, right? So I understand that, but that's still difficult for this tenant who's working and trying their best, and now will have a judgment on their record. We're also seeing a lot of situations where the landlords are giving tenants 30-day notices, which is not even about eviction for non-payment of rent, where they're saying, this has been so difficult that either I'm selling, like I said, or refurbishing, or I'm done. So they're giving their tenants a 30-day notice and saying, your lease is up and you're out. Because unfortunately for low-income tenants, the market is good right now, and rents will maybe going up.
Yeah, I was going to say it's tough, I think, for some people who are aren't making as much to afford the rents that are happening in the valley right now. I mean,
that's right.
And a lot of we see the complaints, and they don't come from landlords; they mostly come from renters. With Let Joe know, and these are people whose rents are being raised $200, $300, $400, $500, a month. And
right.
They just can't afford it, and then trying to find something. Everybody's rents are going up like this.
Right. And so then imagine that being a family who's now got to have to pull their kid out of school, find somewhere for everybody to live. It's really difficult, and they are working. And then having a judgment on their record really hurts their ability to find a decent place to live. So basically, if we can get those judgment, if the landlord's made whole, and we want the landlords to be paid the money that's due, and everybody wants that. We just hope that the tenant can get that judgment off their record.
Yeah, because that can hurt them in getting something in the future. You're right. They put this up. This is from Adina?
Yeah, it's along the same lines. I think people are asking, what their options are with the leases when they're being raised an amount that they can't afford.
Right. So unfortunately, if the way the law works is that if the landlord gives the tenant adequate notice, they are allowed to increase rent. That is what we've had before, and that can continue. And so long as they give the tenant adequate notice of the rent increase, they can do that.
Okay. Again, if you're just joining us, it's Joe Ducey with ABC 15. Let Joe know. Monica Williams, producer with us, and Pam Bridge with Community Legal Services. And we put information on the Facebook page here where you can get resources if you are a renter who is facing eviction right now and need help with this. Community Legal Services may be able to help you if you meet their income requirements or where you live. And there are other places that can also help you. So go to that information that can help you. I wanted to go to, real quick, I wanted to get into, before, we only have probably another little bit of time here. I wanted to go to the protections that renters, what renters should be doing right now. And I read through, I don't know what you want to go to first, but I see number 1 and 2 on your list of what rights do you have if you can't pay rent. Check to see if your landlord has a mortgage forbearance, check to see if your landlord has a federally backed mortgage. Why are these things important?
So these are federal protections. If the landlord has a federally backed mortgage, right now the law is that they have to give the tenant a 30 days before they can evict them. So you can check to see if your landlord has a federally backed mortgage by going on to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac's website and putting the address of your property in. That will let you know whether you are required to receive the 30 days. Now, if the landlord has that federally backed mortgage and they have, I saw questions about, what could the landlord do to help with their mortgage? Well, those mortgages have allowed forbearances. And so if they have a federally backed mortgage and have been in forbearance and have 5 or more units, that landlord cannot evict a tenant for non-payment of rent until the end of September. That's a huge protection. And we know that 1/4 of landlords have federally backed mortgages. So how does a tenant find out? The judges are supposed to ask the landlords right now at court, but tenants can also ask the landlord or landlord's attorney, is there a forbearance right now of that mortgage? So those are 2 big protections for tenants who are living in those types of properties.
Okay. What else would you advise renters to do? I know that you've always said if you could pay the rent, pay it. I know that landlords, though, if they accepted partial payment, that could be an issue for the landlord. But so what would you suggest? Communication, paying rent, what's
Absolutely communicate, because there are some landlords right now who say, pay whatever you can. They want whatever they can. And like we said, there are some tenants going back to work who are able to pay some. If a landlord accepts rent or rent from a third party besides a government agency, so from a nonprofit, a church, you're a family member who helps you out, if they accept any part of your rent, they cannot evict you for that month. So it's September. If they take partial payment of rent for September, they can't evict you in September. So that is a big protection that tenants have. Also, another thing to do is if your landlord just received rental assistance, most of the rental assistance agencies are asking the landlord to agree as part of the contract is when the landlord gets rental assistance, the landlord has to agree not to evict the tenant for 30 days. So the tenants should check to see when that landlord got rental assistance, if they got rental assistance, because if they got rental assistance, it still might be that the tenant owes past rent or maybe September. So let's say they got rental assistance at late August for the back months, and now the tenant can't pay September. They're getting a non-payment of notice. Because they accepted rental assistance, the landlord has to wait 30 days to evict the tenant for non-payment.
Okay. Are you finding that landlords are working with tenants, or is this a market where they can make more money with someone else coming in or raise the rent, because it's a hot market? I could see why landlords would, in some cases, want to take advantage of that. What do you see going on there?
Well, we definitely know that there are landlords working with tenants. That is something that's happening. They want the money too. Unfortunately, people don't call legal aid, CLS, unless there's a problem, right? If everything's going smoothly, you don't call us. And so we are seeing situations where the tenant and landlord are having problems communicating, or the landlord has decided, like I said, to be done with this and not accept rental assistance and move on. And so those are the difficult situations when that relationship, when they're having problems like that. But we know that there are landlords out there who are definitely want that money that's still out there, and want that rental assistance, and so are working with tenants.
Okay, good. I also wanted to give credit to Scott Davis with the Maricopa County Justice Courts. He really helped us get some information together about what's going through with the courts right now. And it is scary about how fast these cases can go on, or how quickly this eviction can happen. You told me, we talked before, that it could happen even quicker. This is something that if it was basically could happen, worst case scenario, in about 2 weeks with newly filed evictions. Day after missed payment, landlord can give a tenant 5-day notice to pay. 6th day, the landlord can file the eviction paperwork at court. Court sets hearing 3 to 6 days later. At the hearing, if the tenant is found guilty, a writ of restitution is issued to be served after 5 days. So that thing can happen so quickly. And you said if it's already been filed, it could happen even faster than that.
Absolutely. We have, like I said, we have tenants out there that already have a judgment who are just not being locked out of their homes because of the CDC order. So their landlords can either go and amend the judgment and they'll have a hearing, or they could just apply for a writ. They could go back in right now and apply for a writ of restitution, which means that a tenant can be locked out in 5 days. So imagine these are tenants who, the other day I was talking to a lady, an elderly lady who's lived in her home 40 years, right? And now her landlord's going after the writ. She has 5 days to move. For most of us, moving is traumatic. Imagine doing it with these short time frames.
Yeah, boy. You know, we've got about probably only about a minute left here. Pam, is there any final thought that you'd like to give people here?
Sure. A couple things is to make sure if you're a tenant, make sure you're talking to your landlord. And second, what you really want to do is avoid that judgment on your record, because that's going to hinder your way to move forward. We all need to think not just immediately after this pandemic about what does life look like when we get back to normal. And so having that judgment on your record can be a burden. One way to get rid of that judgment is if you get rental assistance, trying to negotiate with the landlord to vacate that judgment. Maybe say to the landlord, you know, I'll apply for rental assistance and pay back my back rent if you agree, and get this in writing, to vacate my judgment against me. Right now, the law says that if tenants pay off the entire judgment, the landlord's just required to show to write that it's been satisfied. That still stays on a tenant's record. So we really need to think, what does this look like? You know, not just 2 months from now, but what does this look like a year from now when families are trying to find other places to live?
That's great, Pam. And I really appreciate your help here. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. Thanks, Monica. And again, please take advantage of those sites that we've put here for you if you're facing this right now. And we should have more on this on ABC 15 tomorrow at 6 a.m. So for now, we'll see you next time.